IVM. Welcome to today's episode of This Round is on Me. Don't wait for the right opportunity, create it. This saying fits perfectly with my guest for today's show, who saw waste as an opportunity and started her journey. Divya Ravichandran started a waste management startup, Scrap, in 2017, intending to help organizations, offices, gatherings, and events in Mumbai implement zero waste and eco-friendly solutions. Hi, Divya. Welcome to the show, and thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Gauri. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So tell me, how did you get into the space of waste management?
Oh, well, if you told me 5 years ago that I'd be working in the waste management space, I wouldn't believe you. The problem of waste is not something I was aware of, but that changed in 2016 when a massive fire broke out in the Deonar dumping ground, which is Mumbai and India's oldest and largest dumping ground. The fire was so huge that it was visible in NASA's satellite images. As the blaze lasted for over a week, my respiratory issues peaked at that time. And as I stayed indoors, I was reading the screaming headlines that spoke about the dumping grounds being on fire. My first reaction to that was, what is a dumping ground and why is it on fire? So after reading a lot, I decided this was just not digestible for me and I had to see it firsthand. So a few weeks later, I made my way to the dumping ground, to the periphery of the dumping ground, and saw the situation firsthand. While the fire was quelled by then, what was really surprising to me was to see the scale of trash lying in front of me. I had driven past a flyover that overlooked it, and I always assumed it was some barren land or some hill range. I'd never really thought about it as being the place where half the city's trash is accumulated or just dumped. I also met with a lot of waste worker communities that lived right outside the periphery. I saw children playing cricket inside there. I saw their living conditions, and I learned that communities that live right outside the dumping ground, their average life expectancy was about half that of ours. And I thought that was unacceptable. The pollution that it's causing it to our air, our soil, our water, and the impacts on human health was just absolutely appalling. And that's the day, standing in front of the dumping ground, I decided for myself, I had to check out of this system. I could not be contributing my waste to this dumping ground. And that's when the problem of waste became amply clear to me, and I decided to take action on that. From there, I decided to take action at my personal front. So I started segregating my waste diligently at home. I read and learned about the process of composting, which was in many ways life-changing for me. I learned about recycling and made friends with my local recyclers. And I put at home a waste management system that helped me divert more than 80 or 90% of my waste in just the next 2 to 3 months. And standing in front of my bin and looking inside it in 3 months, I said, wow, that's really simple. Why didn't I know about this before? How has no one ever told me about this? And from there, I started posting about it online. A bunch of friends, family members are like, that's interesting. Do you think I could set up composting at home too? And they had so many questions and myths around it. So I was like, sure, I can come help with that. Mm-hmm. And the more I did it, I realized that the problem of waste wasn't an infrastructure one as much as it was about awareness and behavior change. And then I started getting more curious as to, hey, could this be scaled up? I mean, great, it's happening at an individual level, but could we get businesses to adopt this so it could happen at scale? And that's when I started exploring pilot projects with businesses and with friends who ran small startups. Most of these pilot projects failed, by the way, in the first 6 months. And each one of them was a learning experience.
So I want to know more about that. I'm going to sort of stop you there because I actually remember this fire. But before we could go into this more, I want to know what you were doing before this then.
Right.
that sort of you obviously dropped to get into waste management?
Yeah, so in a previous lifetime, it almost feels like a previous lifetime now, I worked in the corporate space. I worked with Deloitte, which is a big four financial consulting firm. I worked with their innovation team, and I really enjoyed the work that I did there. But I quit that in late 2015 to work in the social enterprise space, to just work there or to start something of my own, something I was like really passionate about. I've always been enthused by the idea of social enterprises. And I actually, very interestingly, quit my work to work in the food salvage space, because food wastage is something which personally irks me a lot. And I said, I'm going to do something to help change that. And then the dumping ground fire happened. And then I just decided, why just food? Let's just expand it to a lot more waste all around us.
It's funny. I mean, I actually quit an accounting job as well to get into food. So I think, that's funny. But so I'm really fascinated that you decided to embark on this journey of waste management. And it's funny that you say that you sort of came across the idea of composting and things, because that's something that's been talked about for a really long time. And I know that the BMC, which is the local municipality, also tried to implement segregation, etc., in buildings and enforce it, not very successfully. Right. But you sort of went from doing it at home to looking at how to scale it for businesses.
Right.
Why did you not sort of think of like how I can scale this in in say residential complexes, which would have been maybe an easier tackle to start with?
Right. Very interestingly, I did try this at my parents' building. And I realized there were too many stakeholders. Like everyone wanted to do their own style, but the baby of waste management or the idea of it like kind of left abandoned. And at that point, I realized that it can take a lot more effort to bring all the stakeholders together. What I love about businesses is that like we usually talk to the top management, right? And then it's a trickle down effect. So it's a lot easier to get all the stakeholders buy-in with that.
Yeah.
I found that there were some incredible NGOs and social enterprises who were doing meaningful work with residential areas and kind of hand-holding them through the process. I did think that given my corporate experience, I was better equipped to kind of talk the language of businesses and understand where they're coming from and where they want to go versus like a residential area. And that's something that truly called out to me.
So tell us about some of the first few projects that you did, which you said didn't quite go as planned. So what were the challenges? And
where do I start? So the first office project that we took up was at a friend's office. And when I presented to them what we want to do about it, everyone's like, well, that sounds interesting. But, we do have someone who comes and collects our waste. So I don't think it's such a big problem, right? What you're tackling. And I was like, sure, let me go behind the scenes and kind of have a look around. So the very first thing I realized as a challenge was the lack of awareness about A, the amount of waste that was being generated, and B, how is it being disposed? What I found was all the waste was mixed. It was just handed over in a mixed manner. Municipality would pick it up and then they can't do much about it either if it's mixed. So it went to the dumping ground. So I did a full back-end study and I presented it to them and they were like, oh, I had no idea about this. And they said, okay, go ahead and give it a shot. But I like what you're doing, but it's not going to work, right? Especially not in India. And I was like, well, I mean, let's give it a shot. And what better way to kickstart a challenge? So the first 2 or 3 months of the project did a lot of awareness campaigns, did workshops, set up changed all the single bins and set up a 3-bin system for them all. And everybody was so confused. They were like, where did my single bin go? And why do you want me to do all of this with my trash? I have such a busy life in the office. So at the end of 3 months, I actually thought that maybe they're right. Maybe this might not work in the age of the idea has not really reached, its time yet. But at the end of 3 months, I saw something beautiful. I saw these little groups of people, these groups of social circles where people were now influencing each other. There were certain people who had adopted it and taken it to it, and then they were influencing their friends. And the social norm in the office was visibly changing. And the biggest learning for me at that point was A, don't give up. And B, the fact that behavior change takes time. You cannot expect immediate result. I think that's one learning that's percolated through all of our efforts and all the projects that we do at Scrap.
I think what you said is absolutely right, that behavior change takes time, and especially when you're trying to do something new, you have to be patient and willing to ride it out to see any sort of sign of success. And I see that even in our own business, where, whenever we've tried to introduce either a new cuisine or a new format of dining, etc. So kudos for being patient, basically. But I think that as a restaurateur, we obviously have, our kitchens, we generate a lot of dry and wet waste on a daily basis. And while we were very sort of conscientious and strict about segregating it into the different colored bin bags and, having different bins, etc., what I ended up seeing was that it was all just going into one truck. And as far as I know, it wasn't actually being, segregation wasn't continuing at the next stage of this whole process. So, I understand that it's really important that you even got the first step going, whether at home or in offices. But isn't it really important that this is sort of seen through, like, right the way through the entire process?
Absolutely. And I think you've just touched upon the biggest challenge that every single business comes back to us with, saying, I might do my bit, but what next? Every stakeholder in the entire chain needs to participate in this for there to be any value and a long-term partnership and participation in terms. And I think like to know that I'm putting in all this effort and I care about it, but it isn't bearing any fruits. I think that's very, it leads to a lot of dismay for sure. The municipalities also, the government is currently building infrastructure, but it's always like a chicken and egg situation. Like the municipalities, the folks handling the garbage are always like, what's the point of me doing all this if you don't segregate waste? And the citizens are always like, what's the point of me segregating if you're not picking it up? So I think in the next, another few months or years, it's going to be in a little flux. But in the long term, we'll definitely see more structured waste management systems in cities. But in the meanwhile, which is why when we work with businesses, what we then recommend is to do a waste audit where we see what is the waste that is being generated, what type of waste, are you segregating this well, and where is it really going? So we kind of study the whole back-end process. And if we find that this isn't going to, that municipality doesn't have the processes for further waste management, then what we do is we bring in other NGOs, partners who actually do compost and recycle it. So it's kind of closing the loop, and you're certain that your waste is then being handled in a responsible and sustainable manner.
Right. So I know that, you're known as someone who discards less than 100 grams of waste once a year. How is this possible? Come on, tell me the secret behind this. I mean, 100 grams a year. So what's the story here, Divya?
Right. So the 100 grams refers to reject waste, which is absolutely not recyclable and then has to be handed over to the municipality. So one of the first things we do at our home is we minimize the use of disposables of any kind. So we use our reusable containers, bags for most of our shopping. So the waste coming into our house itself is stemmed greatly. And then whatever waste we do generate, we have a proper segregation system at home where our biodegradable waste or our kitchen waste is separated, and that's then composted, which is about 60% of our household waste right there. The second bin or bag is for our recyclable waste, which is our papers, plastic, metal, glass, etc. And that I usually collect it, and once in 3 months, I drop off one bag of recyclable waste to the kabadiwala. What I'm left with then is around 100 grams of waste usually, and that might have increased a bit during the pandemic because we didn't have access to a lot of the reusable materials that we usually had. But discarding waste from our home is usually a yearly affair where at the end of on December 31st, the family is around saying, what did we generate this year? What went into our bag?
That's really funny. That's amazing. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think if you sit down and think about it, it's like you said, it's only the non-recyclable that's really the problem. And it's just a matter of being more conscious. But tell me something, when you're working with offices now, and are you sort of taking a step back to look at, even minimizing the waste that they have. So not just segregating it, but like, I'll give you an example, and mine was led by completely different motivation. But when I was pregnant and I knew I was going to be, when I was due to deliver and I knew I was going to be at home for a while, I switched our office as much as I could to an online format. So, like we stopped writing checks, which I would have to sign. We stopped, doing as much like sort of paper sort of stuff. Everything was on, file digitally, all of that. But that was just more because I needed to have access to it from home, not because I was trying to minimize waste. But as a result of it, we have cut down a lot of the paper we're using. And, I'm sort of as strict about that as possible in terms of, not printing, etc. Right. So is that part of your process as well in terms of maybe changing some of those processes for a company to minimize the waste they're even generating in the first place?
Oh, absolutely. Managing the waste you're generating is the second step. The pre-step always has to be, how can we reduce the waste we're generating in the first place? So to give you an example, most of the offices we worked with always use paper cups for their tea and coffee, and everyone's double bagging it because it's hot. So if we helped an office reduce their disposable paper cups by about 90%. And we went back to them with hard data after calculating, saying you're using 1,000 paper cups every single day for 100 employees. Right? In a month, you're using this much. That equates to so many trees. And when you speak in data versus, hey, you're using a lot of paper cups, that really has an impact. And we shared that with the entire office and they said, wow, I had no idea. And within a week, everyone switched to reusable.
But you would think that this kind of thing is kind of common sense and you would expect people to be like moving towards this in general. Right. Like, is that not the case?
That probably is not the case. Now, speak from my personal experience. When I was in the, at an office and when I was in the corporate world, I am guilty of drinking from a lot of paper cups simply because they had a separate bin where all the paper cups would go into. And I just assumed, it's paper. Of course it gets recycled. Who would let all of this go to waste? So I just assumed someone picks it up, magically makes new paper cups and puts it out there. So to share with folks that paper cups are not recyclable. They're really difficult to recycle, and that they're recycled because they're lined with like a plastic, very thin plastic of wax lining on the inside, which makes them really hard to recycle. They're also stained with food and beverages once you've consumed them. So it'll have like a smoothie or tea, coffee inside, which makes them less recyclable. And the economic value of that is as low as 1 rupee a kilo. Nobody wants to spend 2 hours picking one entire kilo of papers for just making 2 rupees. So
that I did not know. So, wow, I definitely learned something here. You're absolutely right. They are lined so that there's no, liquid doesn't seep through. Exactly. So, of course, I'm sure that has an impact. Yeah. But let's sort of bring this closer to home with restaurants, okay? So there's 2 aspects to this. One is that, so we have a farm in Alibag where we grow a lot of produce for the restaurant. So I have been really, really keen to have a composting machine at the kitchen, where our wet waste can just go directly in there and we're not dependent on anyone else to do this. But one of the big issues has been space. So these machines are huge. They stink. And it needs someone to be, dedicated to, churning the waste every day, etc., and basically managing it, right? So that's a very real issue for me. Where our restaurant and kitchen is in the heart of Colaba, where space is at a premium.
Absolutely.
How do establishments like us kind of tackle this? Where neither is it provided by the municipality, nor do we have the capability to do this in our existing infrastructure. So how, what do we do in this kind of scenario where and we're really generating obviously a lot of wet waste?
Right. That's an absolutely valid concern, especially for a city like Mumbai. One of the biggest challenges we face when we're working with businesses is where do they set up a composter? Yeah. So it definitely does require some space, but there has been a lot of innovation in the space in the past few years. So you have a whole host of composting systems that can work for restaurants now, if the space kind of permits it. And it doesn't take that much time. You have some slightly automated versions as well in that. So there are options that are slowly coming up. One thing I just like to point out, that the entire process of composting, when you do it correctly, it actually does not have any smell at all. We've set up composters inside an office where, again, they didn't have space. The only spot we could find was right next to their cafeteria where people are sitting. So everyone's like, listen, this is not going to work. So we were really anxious about setting it up there, but nobody even realized that there was a composter in the vicinity, because we made sure everyone was trained really well in terms of using it. So that kind of makes the process really well if you have a well-trained force to kind of look at that. And an alternative also is that for cities like Mumbai, where it might not be feasible to set up composting in a constrained space, especially when you're generating as much waste as a restaurant would in terms of biodegradable waste, there are also organizations that are now providing this as a service. So they will come on a daily basis, pick up the waste, and take it. They will do this in a more centralized manner where they'll pick up the waste. And if you can't compost at your premises, they will compost it at their facility.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've come across this as well, but then there's usually been like an issue where it's not either on a daily basis because, they've got like fewer vans and they're trying to cover like a larger radius and things. But maybe that's changed. I mean, I haven't, in all honesty, looked at this in the last year, but I think it's definitely time to revisit it. But I want to sort of ask you now in terms of the current scenario, right? So we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I think safety has taken over all concerns about over waste and waste management. For example, in our restaurant itself, we have switched to using one-time use paper napkins, like good quality paper napkins, because people are concerned about, cloth napkins going through so many multiple hands before and being reused, etc. Right? So that's just one example. Of course, that's led to like a huge sort of uneco-friendly way of doing things. What's happening with this in the larger space? I mean, how are you tackling this with all the, even the biomedical waste coming out of COVID crisis, etc.? So how has COVID kind of thrown things off for you?
Right. I think the use of disposables has increased at a lot of like client sites, especially, folks because there is safety concerns. And I think it's important to also be accommodating at this time and, not like there are cases where reusables have been considered to be just as safe and there's enough of like research around it. But I don't think we're in a place where when there's fear that it's a good place to kind of push the ideas. So the second best thing you can do when you're using as many disposables is to look for alternatives that might be more eco-friendly. So for example, instead of a bleached paper-based tissue, you could look at bamboo-based tissues, which are unbleached and it doesn't cause deforestation. So that's a great option to kind of look at. And whatever materials that are being used, if there's an eco-friendly alternative to it, and something which can then also be like, it doesn't have a massive carbon footprint, and then the disposal of it is also possible. By that, I mean it's either recyclable or compostable. Those are good options to kind of look at.
So I think, one of the hurdles here, I mean, just like you mentioned, this sort of bamboo-based napkins, which I'd never heard of. I think one of the biggest issues here is education, right? So that awareness of the multitude of products that are out there, just like if I look at just the restaurant industry alone and the number of things that we probably could do differently, for example, like delivery is obviously taken off in a crazy way in the last year. And, imagine all the sort of, I mean, even for us, like the amount of containers that are being used, people want their delivery bags double bagged so that, they don't touch like whatever, they touch the inner layer, not the outer layer. And, people are like sort of very, as you said, we're dealing with a lot of fear, right? So, and I don't think it's about to like end anytime soon. So considering all of that, I mean, yes, there are some great brands out there, like, there's Bare Necessities, there's a bunch of brands that are really doing a lot to raise awareness, but I think that we're a long way away from maybe tackling it for like, say, a specific industry where, like we've come across people who've said like, hey, why don't you switch from plastic straws to metal straws? And we did do that. And, it was great. Like I'm so happy we were able to do that. Of course, we've never used plastic, takeaway bags or carry bags rather. We've always had paper. But, so the point is that we've switched from plastic mineral water bottles to glass bottles. But then, as you said, I firstly don't know whether the kind of bottle we're using, like what happens after. So I'm just happy I'm not using plastic and I found an alternative, but I'm not even sure if that's the best alternative. Right. It's the same thing. It's just that I feel like there's not enough information out there for our industry, and imagine that with like so many different industries, right? As to specifically what we could be doing to minimize waste.
Right. I agree. I think that because this issue of waste has become something that we all care about in the very recent few months or year, I think the pandemic's really helped boost this up and put the spotlight on it. But it's still a very nascent topic for us, which means brands are still kind of, there's so many brands coming up with so many eco-friendly, more sustainable options that there is definitely a glut of information, and you're not for a particular industry, you're not quite sure where to get that information from. I do think it's going to get a lot more streamlined and it's going to get a lot more mainstreamed in the coming years. But yeah, I think we're in this very transitory phase right now. I want to do this, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting because that's exactly where scrap came to be born at, because we realized that most businesses, especially the ones we've worked with so far, most of them want to do the right thing. They just don't know what the right thing is or how do they get to what the right thing is and how to adapt it. That's about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that maybe there's an idea in there, Divya, that we can do something about, for the industry, just even taking one industry and sort of figuring out alternatives, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, coming back to, the idea of,
Sorry, Gauri, if I may just very quickly extend to what you said, and it's really important for somebody to understand the industry really well before you can come in and give suggestions. So what we at Scrapbook try to do is first we tackled the event industry, right? Where in 2016, there wasn't much awareness about waste management. Most of the event organizers didn't know what was happening to their waste. So in the past 3 years, we've played an instrumental role in kind of helping some of the largest event organizers in India to make that switch to be very cognizant about the waste that they're generating, know their alternatives, and give them very actionable services that they can kind of adopt. And we've just started working with our new vertical, which we launched during 2020. And it's something which we're really passionate about, which is working with the film industry, with production shoots, on understanding what kind of waste are they generating and giving them solutions which are very tailor-made for them. So I do agree that customization needs to happen, and it has to be understanding and keeping the client's needs and the sector's needs in focus. But yeah.
So are you working really closely with the municipalities in the different areas, locations that you work in? How does that next step happen for you? Right. Once you've segregated and,
Right. So we haven't worked very closely with municipalities across various cities, but we do work very closely with waste workers, NGOs, for example, or social enterprise and NGOs that work in the waste management space. Like I said, waste management in India is not necessarily an infrastructure problem as much as it's an awareness and behavior change problem. So what we do at the front end is, while we're setting up processes and infrastructure for the client and building awareness, at the back end, we're also identifying various partners for the location who could potentially provide the services, and then kind of undertake trainings for them, make sure we're stitching all the solutions together in a comprehensive manner so that our clients then don't have to deal with the individual pieces of it, which usually tends to be very informal and unstructured in India, at least at this point.
And, so coming to a very specific issue, which is, I know you said that there's been a growing awareness in the last year of waste management, but I actually think it started, at least in Bombay, it started well before that when, there was a fine imposed for using a certain quality of plastic. Right. And, as far as restaurants were concerned, and a lot of vendors, right, in their carry bags and things. And, the municipality did try to clamp down on this in a serious way. Right. But I think, again, the big issue was that people didn't know what the alternative was, right? So it's we're more than happy to stop using this, but give us an alternative, which is where I think that, that major communication breakdown happened with, the whole process. But I actually came across something really interesting about 6 months ago for our farm in Alibag, where we were doing some renovation work at home, and we got to know one of our neighbors who's actually into the process of making like the equivalent of like concrete sheets out of plastic, so compressed plastic. And it's really funny because we got talking about this, and there's this whole sort of idea in everyone's head that plastic is bad. It's just bad, right? And what he was saying is that it's not that it's bad, it's just that it has to be redirected to the right place to be recycled in the right way.
Right.
And so it's not the thing of like, just ban plastic and stop using plastic like takeaway containers. And yes, they're not great for like dumping in the soil because they're not going to disintegrate, but they can be used for, other sort of repurposed in other ways. So is that again like a misunderstanding on, a general misconception that people have?
Right. So the problem with plastic isn't the material itself. If you look at the early 1900s, plastic was actually touted as the most eco-friendly material that's going to save the planet, especially elephants from extinction, because before that, everything was made from wood and from ivory, which was driving elephants towards extinction. So this was like a man-made material which didn't need to extract and exploit things like forests and animals. So plastic is a miracle material. Right? It's our entire modern world. The internet is kind of built upon that. The issue with plastics is the way we started using it, which is in this disposable use and throw manner. Anything that lasts for thousands and thousands of years cannot be used for 5 seconds and kind of tossed out. It just doesn't make sense. It's estimated that on an average, we're using 1 million plastic bottles every single minute. That is just not sustainable. That's the main issue with plastic. And then what is happening is that in absence of proper waste collection measures and because of littering, you're seeing plastics everywhere now littered, whether it's in cities, whether it's in towns, villages, our oceans. So that's the biggest problem with it. Now, the plastics that we do use, the first step definitely has to be reducing the amount of disposable plastics that we're consuming. And B, whatever plastics we are consuming. Now, plastic is also not just one material. Plastics have various grades of it, like your plastic water bottle is grade 1, which is PET. That's very different from like a Tupperware container, which is grade 5, for example. In terms of recyclability, also a lot of grades differ that way. So the second step is really managing the plastics that we do create and making sure that that goes to a recycling facility if it's recyclable and not end up in our environment.
But how do you do that? Let's be like practical here. Like, I don't know what the nearest recycling facility is to me.
Right. That's a great point. And that's something we heard from a lot of people, especially in a city like Mumbai. And what we found, because of the work we've been doing with waste workers, is that there are a lot of NGOs that run something called dry waste collection centers across Mumbai. So we actually created like an open map where we plotted out the various dry waste collection centers across the city. And it's up on our website for anyone who wants to access it for Mumbai and Bangalore. It's got the Google Map location, It's got the address, it's got the phone number. So a lot of people have been identifying local dry waste collection centers, recyclers through the map.
Amazing. No, I'm going to check that out for sure. Because like I said, that's I think there's a bit of a knowledge gap here, both in terms of, the materials you should and shouldn't use, as opposed to plastic is bad. Right. And then also how you can, better manage your waste once you've figured out what you can't reuse at home. But tell me something. Is a world without trash possible?
Honest answer, no, it's not. We as humans build, create stuff, bring it down, make it all over again. And that process creates trash. And it's not just us, it's ancient civilizations also. It's their trash, it's their pottery that they've left behind that we study, that archaeologists study to understand their way of life. And it's the same for us, except we're just consuming, manufacturing a lot more waste. So I don't think our modern world can allow us to live without waste, but can we reduce the massive amounts of waste that we are creating? Absolutely, yes. Can we prevent all of this waste from ending up in our oceans, in our landfills, in our villages? Absolutely, yes. Can we take actions to be more responsible consumers? Can we take measures to make sure this waste ends up in the right place and manage it responsibly? Absolutely, yes.
So do you think like companies who manufacture non-recyclable products should be penalized or charged a recycling fee, for example?
Right, they actually are. So in 2016, the government introduced under their plastic waste management rules something called EPR, which is Extend Producer Responsibility, as part of which manufacturers are responsible for collecting and recycling or disposal of the waste that they're putting out. So those laws, they are slowly being enforced. In fact, large organizations like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Bisleri just got fined by the Pollution Control Board, I think just this month, with a couple of crores of rupees because they weren't able to meet their EPR targets. It's still loose change for them, but it's a start.
Yeah, no, for sure. And tell me something. I mean, you've gotten into the space now, and you're actually, making a business venture out of it. So, what are the opportunities there for new age entrepreneurs? Do you see, more people getting into the space?
Oh, absolutely. I think the younger generation, especially, this is something that they really care about and want to make a change in this. And we are in the midst of, we're facing a massive garbage crisis. So there is a lot of opportunity in terms of just sustainability and waste management ventures, whether that's products, whether that's packaging, whether that's consulting, implementation. There's definitely a lot of scope. And I think with the increasing awareness that everyone is generally building, and folks care about this, they are increasingly going to hold organizations, corporations responsible for the waste and accountable for the waste that they're generating. So I do think the space is going to grow at a pretty fast pace in the coming years.
And, are there any organizations in India that you think, Bombay or cities that you've worked, where you think are making sort of big strides in this direction that are successful sort of models for this?
So we've done projects in Bangalore, and I think Bangalore, for various reasons, is way ahead compared to most cities that I've been to. Simple things like this. Most of the citizens are actually familiar with the concept of waste segregation for the past 5 to 10 years. They have much more advanced and nuanced, I feel, waste management infrastructure. They have composting facilities, biogas plants, a lot of dry waste collection centers, a lot of organizations working, sustainability and waste management organizations working out of there, and a very active citizen group. So I definitely have to say Bangalore.
Okay. I have a fun fact, actually. I just read this a few days ago about India's first garbage cafe in Chhattisgarh, where basically the municipality was providing food to the poor and homeless in lieu of plastic waste. So that was the currency. Right. So we've obviously reached a point where plastic waste is now a tradable currency. So I think that's amazing, and it's a great model for the possibilities in this space. So I've come to sort of the fun segment of the show where I'm going to ask you things which are to get to know you, the person behind the business mind. So the first thing that comes to your mind. Which 3 food items are always there in your fridge?
A kombucha bottle, lemons, and a plant-based cheese that I absolutely love.
Oh, interesting. I actually just started drinking kombucha, and I've stopped drinking coffee. It's amazing. I think I've just discovered it. So I think I'm late to the party, but it's definitely my flavor of the day. So what's your comfort food?
Masala dosa.
Yum. Yeah, I agree. Divya, who's one of your or who are your role models or inspirations in life?
I can't think of one or inspiring role model, but I'd have to say Jane Goodall.
Mm-hmm. Fair. And why? Why would that be?
I mean, just the incredible work that she's done with chimpanzees, the foundation that she's built, and all of the work they do. It's super inspiring, and just the impact, the scale that they've built this at is amazing.
Fair. the best book you've read recently?
Oh, I'm fascinated by the Mughal Empire of late. I just finished City of Jinns by William Dalrymple.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. And I picked up a book on Shah Jahan, and I'm just like mind boggled. It's like Game of Thrones, like the original version. It's fascinating.
Amazing. Okay, so finally, what are your top tips to declutter at home and in the workplace, and basically, start managing waste smartly? Like, if you had to give our listeners 3 things that they can do at home easily and practically, what would they be?
Right. I think one of the biggest changes that one can adopt is just adopting a more conscious consumer mindset, which is before, like, this is one simple, like, tip and trick that I do. Before buying anything, I just ask myself this: do I really need this? And part 2, if you're interested, is to ask yourself, where does this come from and where is this going to go at the end of my use? I think that's cut down like half the products I consume now. Tip number 2 is going to be, I'd have to say, reducing the amount of disposable products, disposable packaging that we consume. That leads to a significant amount of waste that we actually generate, which can simply be avoided. And tip number 3 is to start composting and recycling your waste. Composting is...
And how do you do that? Tell us how you do that.
So it's super easy. There are so many companies that have built these composters so that if you don't have access to soil and you can't just dig up your food scraps and put it in the soil, you have these home composters. There's something called Daily Dump and Smart Air Bin. Super easy, like really compact. All you have to do is take your food scraps every day and layer it with a brown matter that they provide you with. The brown matter is essentially like carbon. So it can be dry leaves, it can be cocoa peat, it can be sawdust, and you just cover it up. So every day, all you do is you take your food scraps, drop it into your compost bin, add some brown matter, close the composter. Next day, just repeat it till it's full. Turn it around once in a while if you want. And in 3 to 4 weeks, you've got compost. And I'm telling you, the process of composting is an absolute game changer. You go from the first time I heard about composting and that if you just add it to the soil, it's going to turn into soil or add nutrient rich. I was like, what is this voodoo magic? Like, this cannot be true.
That sounds very doable. And I think it's got the OCD in me very excited as well. So I am actually going to look this up as soon as we hang up. But I have to tell you this really cool thing I came across in this restaurant in London called the Ledbury. And we had dinner, and as we were leaving, just outside, they had bags of compost generated from the waste of the restaurant, just there for people to grab and take home and, use in their pots at home. And I just thought that was such an amazing touch when you're leaving a fine dining restaurant, is to leave with a bag of soil, I guess. So, no. But anyway, listen, Divya, this has been
so adorable. Gauri, I just know. Have to add. That is something we do at all the offices and the clients that we work with.
Oh, really?
To bust the myth about like food scraps being smelly, composting being smelly. So when we give the compost back to folks saying, hey, this is your waste back to you. And everyone kind of touches it, plays around with it, smells it. And they even like grow plants and microgreens in it. Like that's the best way to kind of like close that circle and get in touch and get your hands dirty with the soil. It's beautiful.
Well, I'm feeling hugely inspired, and I am going to get going on this, ASAP as soon as we hang up. So listen, this has been such a fun conversation and lots of learning. I really hope people sort of take away from this about how easy it is to get started and to do start at home, really, even before they take it to work. And thank you so much for being here. And I'm sure we'll be in touch and we'll do more together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was a blast. And Gauri, as you start composting, whenever you do, please don't hesitate to drop me a message or give me a call. I'd be super happy to help with that.
I'm going to be stalking you. Don't worry.
I'm done.
Thanks, Divya.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye.
And if you like this show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM Podcast Network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or website or wherever else you get your podcasts from. You can also follow us on social media. We're at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm at G Devidyal on Instagram and at Gory Details on Twitter.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank our sponsors very quickly this week, thewholetruthfoods.com, Storytel, and Syed. We really do appreciate your support. And we had a great week on the network this week. So tune in for some sweetness with our hosts Sadaf and Archit as they hone their sweet tooth and talk about candies. The famous, the healthy, the traditional, and international. Check out Naan Curry. You'll enjoy it. On last week's episode of The Note, Maruk and I spoke to TV presenter and columnist Veer Sanghvi, who analyzed the 2 years of the second term of the Modi government. As China and India signed the disengagement agreement along the LAC, Lieutenant General Dr. Prakash Menon and Manoj Kewalramani joined Suyash Desai to discuss the process and the consequences it will have on the nation and in world politics. Dr. Anton Harder joins Hamsini Hariharan on States of Anarchy to discuss India's right to a seat at the United States Security Council. Ashton Doctor talks about duty, how individually it binds us and how as a society it is liberating. Check out The Habit Coach with Ashton every day. Great show and great fun to listen to that. On Football Shotwal, the boys talk about their loves and sorrows for teams and their current ranks in the world of football. And also do remember to check out Cyrus Says. We had a great week last week. We had Amol Mazumdar, the ex-cricketer. We had Rocky and Mayur. And we did the Valentine's special with Aisha and Kunal. Great fun. Do check it out. I'm sure you will enjoy that. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Archit. खाने का इतिहास, economics, policy, psychology, सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Naan Curry podcast every Wednesday, सिर्फ IVM podcast ऐप या वेबसाइट पर या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो.